Tonight I want to give you 5 words, not a technique, not a system, not a sequence of steps to follow or a formula to apply. 5 words, and if you receive them correctly, if you understand what they are actually saying beneath their simple surface, they contain the whole of what I have been teaching for the entirety of my work. Here they are. Be silent. And it is done. I know how that sounds. The rational mind hears it and immediately generates its objections. Silent about what? Done in what sense? This is too simple. Surely there must be more, and I understand the resistance. Because we have been so thoroughly trained to believe that results require effort, that achievement requires visible, measurable, sustained activity, that anything worth having must be worked for in ways the outer world can observe and validate. But I want to show you tonight that this training, however natural it feels, is backwards. And that the 5 words I have just given you are not a simplification of a more complex truth. They are the most precise possible description of how consciousness actually creates. The silence I am speaking of is not the absence of sound. It is a specific, active, powerful state of inner being, the state of one who has accepted their desire as already accomplished and therefore has nothing left to announce, nothing left to petition for, nothing left to argue toward. The silence of completion, the silence of one who knows. And the "it is done" is not a future event you are hoping for. It is the present fact of what you have established in consciousness, which is the only realm where creation actually takes place, and which the outer world must, by law, eventually reflect. Let me show you what this means. I want to begin with something that will require you to examine a habit so deeply ingrained that most people do not even recognize it as a habit. It feels simply like the natural, obvious thing to do when you want something. You talk about it. You talk about it to friends whose support you want. You talk about it to advisors whose counsel you seek. You talk about it in your inner monologue, rehearsing the arguments for why you deserve it, and the anxiety about whether you will get it. You talk about it when you are hopeful, and you talk about it when you are discouraged. The desire becomes a continuous topic, the subject of a conversation that never quite resolves. Because the very framing of the conversation keeps the desire in the category of not yet possessed. And this is precisely the problem. Every time you speak of your desire as something you want, as something you are seeking, hoping for, working toward, waiting for, you are planting a specific seed in consciousness. The seed of seeking. The seed of not yet. And the law, which is a mirror of absolute fidelity, grows that seed with the same faithfulness with which it grows every other assumption. The universe does not distinguish between a seed you planted deliberately and one you planted accidentally. It does not evaluate the content of your desire and decide whether to grant it. It simply externalizes whatever state of consciousness you are occupying. And if you are occupying the state of one who is seeking and not yet finding, the universe has no choice but to continue presenting you with the experience of seeking and not yet finding. This is why silence is not a passive act. It is a precision instrument. When you go silent about your desire, genuinely silent, not the strained silence of one who is suppressing the urge to speak, but the natural silence of one who has nothing left to announce, you have moved in consciousness from the state of seeking to the state of having. And having, unlike seeking, does not require announcement. You do not announce the things you already possess. You simply possess them quietly, naturally, without comment. The silence is the evidence of the shift. Consider a seed planted in the earth. Does it announce itself? Does it describe to the world above what it is in the process of becoming? Does it generate a running commentary on its own growth? It grows in silence, beneath the surface, without a single word. And yet the process underway in that silence is more real, more vital, more consequential than any announcement the seed could make. Your desire planted in consciousness is that seed. Give it the silence it needs to grow. Stop digging it up to show it to people. Stop describing it as something you are trying to obtain. Let it germinate in the quiet, unseen, entirely productive dark of your inner world. I want to be very precise now about the quality of silence I am describing, because there are two kinds of silence and only one of them creates. The first kind of silence is empty, the silence of one who has abandoned their desire, who has given up speaking about it because they no longer believe in its possibility, who has gone quiet out of resignation rather than certainty. This silence is not creative. It is simply the absence of speech from the absence of hope, and the state it reflects, the state of one who has surrendered to lack, is exactly what the law will externalize. The second kind of silence is full, the silence of one who has accepted their desire as already accomplished in consciousness, who has nothing left to announce or petition, for because the matter is settled, who carries the certainty of having in the same quiet, unremarkable way that you carry the certainty of possessing your own name. This silence is alive. It is, as I sometimes say, pregnant with the reality of the thing already done. And it is from this silence that all genuine creation flows. The difference between these two silences is entirely a matter of inner state. Both look the same from the outside in both cases. Nothing is being said, but inside they are opposite conditions. One is the quiet of despair, the other is the quiet of certainty. And the law responds to the inner state, not the outer appearance. So how do you arrive at the second kind of silence? How do you move from the anxious, monitoring, perpetually seeking state that most people inhabit into the settled, full, genuinely accomplished feeling state that this creative silence requires? Through what I call living from the end. Living from the end means this. Rather than directing your imagination toward the process of achieving your desire, visualizing yourself working toward it, imagining yourself making progress, picturing the steps along the path, you direct your imagination directly to the state of already having arrived. You bypass the journey and inhabit the destination. You enter in imagination the specific quality of consciousness that belongs to the person for whom the desired thing is simply and already present. Not dramatically, not with the ecstatic intensity of someone who has just unexpectedly received something wonderful, with the quiet, natural, completely unremarkable ease of someone for whom this is simply life, the settled security of one who is financially at ease, the warm, background certainty of one who is deeply loved, the unthinking freedom of movement in a body that simply works, the particular quality of a Tuesday afternoon in a life where the desired thing is already there. Find that feeling, enter it completely, and then go silent. Not the silence of one who is withholding, the silence of one who has already, in the only realm that matters, arrived. I want to address something that I know troubles many people when they first encounter the principle of living from the end, because until it is resolved, the whole practice feels like an exercise in self-deception, and no one can maintain genuine conviction in something they suspect is a lie. The question is this: if my outer world clearly shows me that my desire is not yet present, how can I honestly claim that it is done? Am I not simply pretending? Am I not deceiving myself by inhabiting a state that contradicts the facts? My answer is this: you are not deceiving yourself. You are perceiving more accurately than your senses allow. Here is the principle I want you to receive as deeply as you can. Your outer world does not show you what is real. It shows you what was established in consciousness in the days and weeks and months and years prior to this moment. The outer world is always the past, materialized. It is the harvest of seeds already grown, not the condition of seeds currently being planted. Your imagination, by contrast, shows you what is in the sense that matters most. In the realm of pure consciousness, where cause actually lives, your vividly imagined, feelingly inhabited desire is already real. It is already established. It has already been accepted as true in the only medium in which truth, in the creative sense, exists. The fact that it has not yet appeared in the outer world does not make it less real. It means only that the outer world has not yet caught up to what has been established inwardly, which it inevitably will. By law, in the same way that a reflection in a mirror inevitably follows a change in what is standing before it. Think of it this way. You are standing in a dark room. A light switches on the wall. The electricity, the power that will fill the room with light is already present, already real, already flowing through the wires in the wall. It exists whether the switch is on or off. When you flip the switch, you are not creating the electricity. You are choosing to connect with what already is. Your desire is like that electricity. The version of reality in which your desire is fulfilled already exists in the infinite field of consciousness. It is not a future possibility waiting to be created. It is a present reality waiting to be inhabited. When you live from the end, when you genuinely, feelingly occupy the state of the wish fulfilled, you are flipping the switch. You are choosing to connect with what is already there. This is not self-deception. This is the recognition that consciousness is primary and the outer world is secondary, that what is real in consciousness is more real than what is currently visible in the world. Because the world is always following consciousness, never leading it. When you understand this, the silence becomes entirely natural. You are not pretending that something is true, while secretly believing it is not. You are inhabiting a truth that your physical senses cannot yet report on, but which is nonetheless the most operative truth available to you. There is a particular form of noise louder, in many ways, than any spoken word that destroys the creative silence more reliably than almost anything else. It is the noise of trying to figure out how. The moment you genuinely accept your desire as already accomplished in consciousness, the anxious planning mind enters. How will this happen? Through what channel? By what sequence of events? Who will be involved? And what will they do? And how will the circumstances arrange themselves? And this mental noise, however well-intentioned, is the antithesis of the creative silence, because it is the activity of a mind that does not truly trust the law to do what the law does. Let me be direct about what is happening when you try to figure out the how. You are, in that moment, operating from the assumption that the law requires your assistance in finding the path, that your conscious, rational, finite mind needs to map the road before the creative process can proceed, that if you cannot see how it will happen, perhaps it will not. But the law does not require your assistance in finding the path. It is operating at a level of intelligence, creativity, and awareness that the surface mind cannot approach. It sees connections you cannot see, pathways you cannot map, arrangements of circumstances that your conscious planning would never conceive of. And it works most freely, most efficiently, most elegantly when you release your grip on the how and allow it to find the route that your limited vision cannot. This release is not passivity. It is not the abandonment of engagement with your life. Inspired actions will arise naturally from the state you are occupying without strain or calculation, and you will follow them. But the difference between inspired action and anxious planning is this. Inspired action arises from the state of already having, as the natural expression of that state. Anxious planning arises from the state of not yet having, from the fear that if you do not figure out the how, it will not come. Act from inspiration. Release the how. Trust the intelligence that keeps stars in their courses and grows seeds into trees without your oversight. The same applies to when. The question of when will it manifest is the question of a mind that has not yet fully accepted that in consciousness, in the only realm of cause, the manifestation has already occurred. The when is the outer world's business, not yours. Your business is the inner state. The outer world will catch up when it catches up, and your anxious monitoring of its timetable will not accelerate the process. It will only return you, again and again, to the state of not yet having, which is precisely the state you are trying to leave. Go silent about the when. Go silent about the how. Inhabit the state of the accomplished fact, and let the law tend to the details. I want to address something practical now, because the principle I have been describing is not a single act, but a sustained orientation, and sustaining it through the ordinary resistance of daily life requires two specific practices that I have found indispensable. The first is revision. No matter how completely you have entered the creative silence, no matter how genuinely you have inhabited the state of the wish fulfilled, the day will present you with moments that pull you back toward the old state, a circumstance that seems to contradict your assumption. A person who responds to you in a way that confirms the old identity rather than the new. A moment of doubt that arrives with the specific authority of one who has been in this position before and knows how it usually goes. When these moments occur, and they will, the natural response is to accept them as evidence, to treat the contradiction as the more honest report on reality, and revise the assumption downward accordingly. And this is precisely the response that extends the interval between the inner establishment of the desire and its outer manifestation. Instead, practice revision. At the end of each day, in the quiet before sleep, review the moments that did not belong to the state of your wish fulfilled. The moments of doubt, the reactions from the old state, the exchanges that felt like confirmation of the old identity. Do not accept them as final. In your imagination, revise them. See them unfolding as they would have if you had been fully inhabiting your desired state. Feel how you would have felt. Respond in imagination as the person who already has. This is not denial of what occurred. It is the creative act of replanting, of returning deliberately to the seed you want growing, rather than allowing the day's contradictions to compete with it in the soil. The second practice is persistence. Not the grim, grinding persistence of one who is forcing themselves to maintain a belief they are not sure they hold, but the natural, easy persistence of one who keeps returning home. Home, in this context, is the state of the wish fulfilled, the particular quality of consciousness that belongs to the person who already has what you desire. And the practice is simply this: keep coming back to it, not once a day in a formal meditation, but throughout the day, in the brief recalibrating moments between one activity and another. The question I gave you in another context serves here as well. How would I feel right now if my desire were already fulfilled? Ask it. Feel the answer. Return home. This persistence, practiced without strain and without drama, gradually changes the center of gravity of your consciousness from the old state to the new. Not suddenly, not through a single dramatic shift, but through the accumulated weight of many small returns, each one reinforcing the new address, each one deepening the roots of the assumption you have planted. Let me leave you tonight with the image that, for me, most precisely captures the quality of the creative silence I have been describing. Not the silence of an empty room, not the silence of one who has nothing to say, the silence of a letter already sent. When you have written a letter and sealed it and placed it in the post, you are done. The matter is complete. You do not stand at the mailbox waiting anxiously to see if the letter has moved. You do not reopen the envelope to check whether the words are still there. You do not announce to everyone you meet that you have sent a letter and wonder aloud whether it will arrive. The letter is sent. The process is underway. Your part is finished. This is the silence of completion. And it is this silence, not the silence of resignation, not the silence of doubt, but the full, settled, entirely natural silence of one whose part in the transaction is done, that you are reaching for in your relationship to your desire. You have imagined it. You have felt it as real. You have inhabited the state of its fulfillment with as much genuineness and depth as you can bring to it. You have, in the only realm where creation actually takes place, planted the seed and established the assumption. Now go silent, not as an act of will, as the natural consequence of having done what was yours to do. Stop announcing the desire. Stop monitoring for its arrival. Stop explaining to people what you want and how long you have wanted it and whether you think it is on its way. These forms of speech all belong to the state of not yet having, and the law will grow that state as faithfully as any other. Instead, carry your desire the way you carry the things you already have quietly, naturally, without comment. Live from the state of its fulfillment. Think from that state. React from that state. Breathe from that state. Meet each moment of your day from that state. And in that silence, that full, alive, pregnant, completely certain silence, watch as your world, which is always and only the faithful mirror of your consciousness, begins the process of catching up with what you have already, in the only place that matters, established as done. The seed is planted, the letter is sent, the switch has been flipped. Be silent, it is done. Have you ever noticed that everything you see in this world, every circumstance, every person, every event, is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the state of your own consciousness? And if that is true, then the most important question is not, when will my dream come? But rather, who am I being in this moment? Because let me tell you plainly, God is not some external judge sitting on high, deciding whether you are worthy. God is the I am consciousness within you. And when that consciousness knows, not hopes, not believes, but knows that you are ready, the outer world will shift to reflect it. But how do you know when you're ready? There are signs. There are moments of awakening. And today, I will show you what they are. Let me take you into an ancient story, one that most people read as history, but I will show you as pure psychology. In the book of Genesis, there is the story of Jacob and Esau, twin brothers born to Isaac. Esau, the elder, came out first, strong and hairy, a man who lived by the strength of his hands, a hunter, a man of the field. Jacob, the younger, came out second, but even at birth his hand grasped Esau's heel. Their father Isaac grew old and blind, and the time came for him to give his blessing to his firstborn son. Now in those days, the blessing of the father meant everything. It meant inheritance, authority, destiny. Isaac called for Esau and told him to go hunt game and prepare a meal, and then he would receive the blessing. But Rebekah, their mother, overheard this and called Jacob. She dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes, placed goat skins on his hands and neck to make him feel hairy like his brother, and sent him to Isaac with the meal. When Isaac felt him and smelled the clothes, he was deceived. He believed he was blessing Esau, but he blessed Jacob instead. And when Esau returned and discovered what happened, it was too late. The blessing had been given. Now, the world reads this as a story of deception, of trickery, of one brother stealing from another. But that is not what this story means. This is not history. This is happening in you right now. Esau represents your outer self, the man of the senses, the one who lives by what he can see and touch and hunt down with effort. Esau is the state of consciousness that says, I must work hard, I must struggle, I must earn my blessing through the sweat of my brow. Jacob represents your inner self, your imagination, the one who lives by assumption and feeling. Jacob is the consciousness that knows how to put on the garment of the wish fulfilled, to assume the feeling of already being what you desire to be, and to go boldly before the Father, before your own I am, and claim the blessing. And the Father, blind to the outer circumstances, feels only the state you are in, smells only the garment you are wearing in consciousness, and gives you the blessing. Do you see? God does not see your current circumstances. God does not see your bank account or your empty bed or your unfulfilled dreams. God sees only the state of consciousness you are occupying. And when you put on the feeling of your wish fulfilled, when you wear it like Jacob wore Esau's clothes, the blessing must come to you. It is law. But here is what you must understand. Jacob could not receive that blessing until he was ready to take it. He had to be willing to ignore the evidence of his senses. He had to be willing to go before his blind father, dressed as someone he was not yet in the outer world. He had to assume the state. And this is where most people fail. They wait. They wait for the circumstances to change first. They wait for permission. They wait for a sign from the outside that they are worthy, that they are ready. But I tell you, you will never be ready in the outer world first. You must be ready in consciousness first. You must claim your blessing in imagination before it can manifest. In fact, I once knew a man who came to me desperate, broken, defeated. He had been trying to start his own business for 3 years. 3 years of failure, of doors closing, of money running out. He said to me, "Neville, I've tried everything. I've worked 18-hour days. I've knocked on every door. I've done affirmations, visualizations, prayers. Nothing works. Maybe this dream isn't meant for me." And I looked at him and I said, "Tell me, when you imagine your business, when you visualize it, what do you feel?" He paused and said, "I feel hopeful. I feel like maybe one day it could happen." And there was his problem. Hope is not the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Hope is the feeling of lack. Hope is Esau, standing outside, waiting for the blessing to come someday. I told him, "You must stop hoping. You must stop trying. You must stop working from the consciousness of I want this business. Instead, you must enter into the consciousness of I am a successful business owner. Not will be, not could be, am." I taught him to go into his imagination every night before sleep, and instead of visualizing his future success, to live in the feeling that he already was successful. To feel the satisfaction of a full calendar, to feel the weight of money in his bank account, to feel the respect of clients and employees, to feel the relaxation of a man who has already arrived, not someday. Now. In imagination it was now. And I told him, do this with such conviction that when you open your eyes and see your current circumstances, you no longer believe them. You know they are simply shadows of an old state, and they must pass. For 2 months, nothing changed in his outer world. In fact, things got worse. More rejection, more bills, more pressure from family, telling him to give up and get a normal job. But he persisted. Every night, he entered his inner chamber, and in that sacred place of imagination, he lived as the man he intended to be. He didn't hope, he didn't wish, he simply was. And then, in the 3rd month, something shifted. An old acquaintance called him out of nowhere with an opportunity. A contract landed in his lap that he hadn't even pursued. A client he had given up on years ago suddenly returned with a large project. Within 6 months, his business was thriving beyond even what he had imagined. And when he came back to me, I asked him what changed. He smiled and said, "I finally stopped being Esau and became Jacob. I stopped hunting for my blessing and started assuming I already had it." This is the secret. This is what God, your own wonderful I am, is waiting to see in you. Not your hard work, not your worthiness, not your perfect circumstances. God is waiting to see you assume the state of the wish fulfilled. To put on the garment of your dream so completely that you forget you are wearing a costume, you become it. And when you become it in consciousness, when you feel it, when you live in it, when you think from it instead of thinking of it, then the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. This is not magic. This is not luck. This is not the universe doing you a favor. This is law. As within, so without. As above, so below. As you are in consciousness, so is your world. Now, let me tell you the signs that you are ready. The signs that God already, your own I am, knows you are prepared to live your dream. The first sign is this: you stop asking when. When people come to me and ask, Neville, when will my desire manifest? How long will it take? I know they are not ready, because one who is ready does not ask when. One who is ready knows that in imagination it has already happened. Time exists only in the outer world, not in consciousness. In consciousness, there is only now. When you have truly assumed the state of your wish fulfilled, you are not waiting for it to happen. You are living from the assumption that it has already happened, and you are simply allowing the three-dimensional world to catch up with your inner reality. The question, when, comes from the state of lack, from the consciousness that is still standing outside, looking in. Jacob did not ask Isaac, when will you bless me? He walked in and claimed his blessing. He assumed he was Esau, and therefore the blessing was already his. The second sign is this: you stop caring what others think or say about your dream. When you are living in the wish fulfilled, the opinions of others become meaningless noise. Why? Because you are not trying to convince anyone of anything. You are not defending your dream. You are not justifying your vision. You are simply being. A king does not argue with peasants about whether he is king. He simply is king, and his kingdom reflects it. I remember a woman who told me she wanted to marry a specific man, but her friends all told her she was crazy, that he was out of her league, that she should be realistic. And she said to me, Neville, their words hurt. They make me doubt. And I said, why do you listen? Their words have no power unless you give them power. They are speaking from their consciousness, not yours. They are seeing the world through their assumptions, not yours. Let them speak. You go into your inner chamber and live as his wife. Feel the ring on your finger. Feel his arms around you. Feel the love between you. And when you come out of that chamber, do not defend your vision to anyone. Simply smile, because you know something they don't know. You know that your imagination is God, and what you have assumed in imagination must manifest in fact. The third sign is this: you become indifferent to current circumstances. This is perhaps the most important sign of all. When you are truly ready, when you are truly living in the state of the wish fulfilled, the current facts of your life no longer disturb you. Not because you are in denial, but because you understand that facts are simply frozen states, echoes of past assumptions. They have no power to perpetuate themselves unless you continue to accept them and react to them. Most people are slaves to their circumstances. They look at their empty bank account and feel poor. They look at their lonely bed and feel unwanted. They look at their failing health and feel sick. And in feeling these things, they perpetuate these things. But the one who is ready, the one whom God knows is prepared to live their dream, looks at these same circumstances and feels nothing. Or rather, they feel what they have assumed to be true in imagination, not what the senses are reporting. They look at the empty bank account and feel wealthy. They look at the lonely bed and feel loved. They look at the weak body and feel strong. Not because they are pretending, but because they have shifted their consciousness. And consciousness is the only reality. Let me be very clear about this, because it is the stumbling block for so many. You are not trying to manifest things. You are not trying to attract circumstances. You are not trying to make something happen. You are simply assuming a state of consciousness, and that state projects itself into your world. Your world is your consciousness pushed out. If you are conscious of being wealthy, you will see wealth. If you are conscious of being loved, you will see love. If you are conscious of being healthy, you will see health. It cannot be otherwise. This is why I tell you, stop looking at your circumstances for evidence of your manifestation. Your circumstances are showing you who you were, not who you are. They are showing you the state you occupied yesterday, last week, last month. But who are you now? What are you conscious of now? Because this is what will be projected into your tomorrows. I knew a man who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctors gave him 6 months to live. His family prepared for his death. His affairs were in order. But this man had studied the law. He understood consciousness, and he refused to accept the state of dying. Instead, every day, multiple times a day, he would go into his imagination and live as a healthy man. He would feel the vitality in his body. He would feel the strength in his muscles. He would imagine running, playing with his grandchildren, living for many more years. And when anyone spoke to him about his illness, he would smile and say, "That's not who I am." Not with arrogance, but with the quiet knowing of one who has assumed a different state. Months passed. The illness did not progress as predicted. Then it stabilized. Then it began to reverse. The doctors called it a miracle, a spontaneous remission, a medical anomaly. But he knew the truth. It was not a miracle. It was law. He had changed his state of consciousness, and his body had no choice but to conform to that new state. The fourth sign that you are ready is this: you feel a deep inner peace, a satisfaction, as if your desire has already been fulfilled. This is not the giddy excitement of hope. This is not the desperate clinging to a wish. This is the calm, quiet knowing of one who has already received. When you go to a store and purchase something, and the clerk says, "Your order will be delivered next week," do you leave the store anxious, wondering if it will really come? Do you check the tracking every 5 minutes? Do you call the store repeatedly, asking when it will arrive? No. You go home at peace because the transaction is complete. You know it is yours. You may still be waiting for the physical delivery, but in consciousness, you already possess it. This is the feeling you must have with your desire. You must feel the transaction is complete. In imagination, you have already received. Now you simply go about your life at peace, allowing the delivery to come in its own time. But here is where people make a mistake. They think peace means inaction. They think if they are truly living in the wish fulfilled, they should just sit on their couch and wait for their dream to materialize. No, you still move through your day. You still take action. But your action does not come from the state of lack. Your action comes from the state of fulfillment. There is a difference. When you act from lack, you are trying to make something happen. You are forcing, pushing, struggling. But when you act from fulfillment, you are simply moving as the person who already has what they desire. Your actions are natural, effortless, inspired. You are not trying to get somewhere. You are already there in consciousness, and your physical movements are simply the shadow following the reality. The fifth sign is this: you stop testing your manifestation. You stop looking for proof. You stop analyzing whether it's working, because the moment you start testing it, you have fallen out of the state. Imagine you are playing a role in a play. You are on stage, fully immersed in your character. The audience believes you are that character. But then, in the middle of a scene, you suddenly step out of character, look at the audience, and ask, "Am I doing this right? Do you believe me?" The illusion is broken. You have destroyed the very thing you were creating. This is what you do when you test your assumption. When you go into imagination and assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are playing a role. You are acting as if. And the more fully you embody that role, the more real it becomes. But the moment you step out and ask, "Is it working? Where is my manifestation? Why hasn't it come yet?" you have broken the spell. You have told your subconscious, "Actually, I don't really believe this. I'm just pretending." And your subconscious, which accepts every assumption you make, says, "Very well, you are just pretending, and it will not manifest." Let me share with you the story of a young woman who wanted to be a professional singer. She had talent, but she had no opportunities. No one would give her a chance. She auditioned for everything and was rejected every time. She came to me frustrated, asking what she was doing wrong. I asked her, "When you imagine yourself as a successful singer, do you sustain that feeling throughout the day?" She admitted, "No. I imagine it at night. But then during the day, when I'm rejected again, I fall back into feeling like a failure. I told her, there is your problem. You are not persisting in the assumption. You are trying on the state for a few minutes and then taking it off. You must wear it constantly. You must be a successful singer in your imagination so persistently that the rejections in the outer world don't shake you. They are simply old facts, old shadows, and they must fade as you persist in your new assumption. She took my words to heart. She stopped applying the feeling occasionally and started living in it constantly. Every morning, she would wake up and, before opening her eyes, she would feel the satisfaction of being a celebrated singer. Throughout the day, regardless of what happened, she would return to that feeling, and she stopped auditioning so desperately. She auditioned as one who already knew she was talented and valued. Within 3 months, she was discovered by a producer who heard her singing at the small venue. Within a year, she had a recording contract. And when reporters asked her how she made it, she smiled and said, I stopped trying to become a singer. I started singing. This is what it means. Persistence is not about repeating affirmations 1,000 times. Persistence is about maintaining a state of consciousness, regardless of what the outcome is. It is about being connected to something that doesn't continue on. This is faith. Not faith in some external God. Not faith that maybe, possibly, hopefully it will happen. But faith in your own consciousness as the only creative power. Faith that what you assume to be true in imagination must become true in fact. This is the faith that moves mountains. This is the faith that parts seas. This is the faith that raises the dead. Now, let me address the doubt that I know is rising in some of you. You are thinking, but Neville, I have tried this. I have imagined my desire. I have assumed the feeling, but nothing has changed. How long must I persist? When will I see results? And here is my answer. You are still asking the wrong question. You are still living in the state of waiting. You are still standing outside the door, knocking and hoping to be let in. But I tell you, the door is already open. You are already inside in imagination. And that is where all creation takes place. The outer world is simply the echo. It must conform. It has no choice. But you must not waver. You must not go back into the old state. Every time you accept the evidence of your senses as more real than your imagination, you are denying the truth. You are saying, what I see is more powerful than what I assume. And so what you see perpetuates itself. Let me tell you something that will change everything for you if you truly hear it. Your outer world at this very moment is showing you the state of consciousness you occupied in the past. It is not showing you the present. It is showing you what you were yesterday, last week, last month. Do you understand what this means? It means that the emptiness you see, the lack you experience, the problems you face, these are all shadows of an old state. They are not real in the sense that they have power to continue unless you continue to accept them and react to them. But if you have assumed a new state, if you have changed your consciousness, then these old shadows must fade. They must dissolve. They have no substance to sustain them, but you must not be moved by them. You must not let them convince you that your new assumption is false. You must see them for what they are, ghosts, echoes, illusions, and you must remain faithful to your new state. The sixth sign that you are ready is this: you begin to revise the past. Revision is one of the most powerful techniques I can teach you, yet it is one of the least understood. Most people think the past is fixed, unchangeable. They carry their wounds, their failures, their regrets like heavy stones, and they believe these stones shape their present and their future. But I tell you, the past is not fixed. The past is a memory, and a memory is a state of consciousness, and any state of consciousness can be changed. When you revise a memory, when you replay it in your imagination with a different outcome, you are not merely fantasizing. You are actually changing the energy, the emotional charge, the meaning of that past event. And when you change the meaning, you change its effect on your present. I knew a man who had been betrayed by a business partner 20 years prior. That betrayal had cost him everything: his money, his reputation, his trust in others. And for 20 years, he lived in the shadow of that event. He could not move forward, he could not build again, he was frozen. Every time he considered a new opportunity, the memory of that betrayal would surface, and fear would paralyze him. When he came to me, I did not tell him to forgive. I did not tell him to let go. I told him to revise. I told him to go into his imagination and replay that moment of betrayal, but this time to imagine it happening differently. To imagine his partner being honest, loyal, trustworthy. To imagine the business succeeding. To feel the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of that alternate reality. And to do this every night before sleep, until the new memory felt more real than the old one. He resisted at first. He said, "But Neville, that's not what happened. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." And I said, "You are not pretending, you are revising. You are changing your state of consciousness related to that event. And when you change your consciousness, you change your world." Reluctantly, he began the practice. Night after night, he would replay that moment with a different outcome. At first, it felt false, artificial, but he persisted. And slowly the emotional charge of the original memory began to fade. The anger, the bitterness, the fear, they lost their grip on him. And as they faded, something remarkable happened. New opportunities began to present themselves. People he hadn't heard from in years reached out. Ideas flowed. Within a year, he was back in business, more successful than ever before. And when I asked him about the betrayal, he looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "You know, I can barely remember how it felt. It's like it happened to someone else." This is the power of revision. You are not changing the facts of the past in the three-dimensional world. You are changing your relationship to those facts. You are changing the meaning, the energy, the story you tell yourself about what happened. And in doing so, you free yourself from the prison of the past. You give yourself permission to move forward. You change who you are now, and therefore you change what can come to you now. This is not denial. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is conscious creation. This is taking responsibility for your state of consciousness and refusing to be a victim of circumstance, whether past or present. The seventh sign that you are ready is this: you stop seeking validation from others. When you are truly living in the state of the wish fulfilled, you do not need anyone to confirm your experience. You do not need anyone to agree with you, to support you, to believe in you. You are complete in yourself. Your consciousness is your only reality, and it requires no external proof. This is the ultimate freedom. This is what it means to be I am. Not I am what others say I am. Not I am what my circumstances say I am, but simply I am. I define myself. I create myself. I am the author of my own story. Most people live their entire lives seeking approval. They shape themselves according to the expectations of their parents, their peers, their culture, their society. They ask, what should I be? What is possible for me? What will others accept? And in doing so, they give away their creative power. They become Esau, living by the strength of their hands, by the sweat of their brow, by the approval of the world. But when you awaken to your true nature, when you realize that I am is God, you no longer seek permission from anyone. You claim your blessing. You assume your state. You become who you intend to be, and you let the world adjust to your new assumption. Let me tell you plainly what happens when you reach this state of readiness. When all these signs are present in you, the world begins to conspire in your favor, not because you are special, not because you are lucky, but because you have changed your state of consciousness, and the world has no choice but to reflect that new state. Doors open that were previously closed. People appear who were previously absent. Opportunities arise that were previously impossible. And it all seems effortless, natural, inevitable, because it is. When you are in the state of the wish fulfilled, manifestation is not a struggle. It is a natural unfolding. You are not forcing anything. You are simply being, and the being creates. But you must understand that this state of readiness is not something you wait for. It is not something that will happen to you someday when you are more evolved or more spiritual or more deserving. This state of readiness is something you claim right now, in this moment. You do not become ready by working harder, by proving yourself, by accumulating more worthiness. You become ready by assuming you are ready. You become ready by deciding you are ready. You become ready by entering into the feeling of already having what you desire and refusing to come out of that feeling, regardless of what the outer world shows you. This is the great secret that has been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. The kingdom of heaven is within you. The creative power is within you. God is within you, not as some separate entity you must please or appease, but as your own I am consciousness. And when you learn to direct that consciousness, when you learn to assume states rather than react to circumstances, when you learn to live from the end rather than from the beginning, you become the master of your fate. You become the creator of your world. You become God in human form, which is what you have always been, but you finally awaken to it. So I ask you now, in this moment, who are you being? Not who do you want to be, not who are you trying to be, but who are you now in consciousness? Are you the person waiting for your dream to come someday? Or are you the person living your dream now in imagination and allowing the outer world to catch up? Are you Esau, working and striving and struggling? Or are you Jacob, assuming the feeling and claiming the blessing? Are you a victim of circumstances, or are you the creator of circumstances? The answer to this question determines your entire experience of life. If you have been waiting for a sign that you are ready, this is it. The very fact that you are hearing these words, that something in you resonates with this truth, is the sign. Your own wonderful I am is speaking to you, reminding you of who you really are. You are not a powerless creature hoping for mercy from an external God. You are consciousness itself, creating your world with every assumption you make. And when you fully accept this, when you fully embody this, when you live from this knowing rather than from the illusion of separation and lack, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you have changed, and your changed consciousness projects a changed world. Let me leave you with this final truth. You do not need to wait for anything. You do not need to earn anything. You do not need to prove anything. You simply need to assume the state of the wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption, regardless of what you see, regardless of what others say, regardless of how long it takes in three-dimensional time. Because time is an illusion, delay is an illusion, lack is an illusion. The only reality is consciousness, and your consciousness right now is creating your tomorrow. So be very careful what you are assuming. Be very careful what state you are occupying, because that state will manifest. It must. It is law. You are God. You are the creator. You are I am. And when you know this, not as a concept, but as a living reality, when you feel this in every fiber of your being,